everyone, welcome back to my channel. I have something new and exciting for you today. For some time now, I have been collecting these vintage cookbook pamphlets or recipe pamphlets. I have, these range from the 1930s to the 1950s, and I haven't ever really done much with them. I've tested a couple recipes, but I thought what a great series that would be to show retro recipes, some that stand the test of time and some that I revamped to kind of make them a little more modern. Today I have one of those recipes for you, and in keeping with the fall season, I have picked from the ground meat cookbook a stuffed acorn squash stuffed with sausage. And the original retro recipe is not bad. It tastes really, really good. The texture was just kind of one note. It all had the same texture to it. So I kept the same flavor profile, but added a few extra components in it to just make it a little more interesting and a little tastier. So if you would like to see how I did this, then please keep watching.
I'm actually going to show you both versions, the original vintage recipe and then my revamped version. Start by prepping the acorn squash. First cut them in half and then use a grapefruit spoon to spoon out the innards. I find that's the easiest way to get everything out. The little slice I show you off the back is just going to make sure they lay flat in the pan. Heat your oven to 400 and get a kettle of water boiling on the stove. Flip the prepared acorn squashes upside down so the open cavities are touching the bottom of the pan. Once your water is boiling, take it off the heat. You're going to want to pour enough water so that it comes up about a half an inch up the sides of the baking dish. Bake in your preheated oven for 30 minutes. While your squashes are baking, mix together 1 pound of pork sausage. I used maple sausage, 2/3 of a cup of fine dry breadcrumbs, a half a cup of undiluted evaporated milk, and 1 egg that has been beaten. Mix this lightly and shape into 4 patties that are about 3/4 of an inch thick. You can definitely use a utensil if you're squeamish about touching raw meat. I just thought it was faster to just use my hands, and I did wash them beforehand, just so you know. Place all 4 patties in a cold skillet. Add 2 tablespoons of water. I just used the water that I already had in the kettle. And cover the skillet and cook slowly for 5 minutes. Remove the cover, and if there is any excess liquid in the pan, pour it off. Lightly brown patties over medium heat, turning frequently to brown on both sides and pouring off fat as it collects. Remove patties to absorbent paper. Drain off any remaining fat from the skillet and wipe the skillet with an absorbent paper. In the same skillet, blend together 1 cup of whole cranberry sauce, a 1/4 cup of firmly packed brown sugar, and 1 tablespoon of vinegar. I used apple cider vinegar because I figured that would be one of the most readily available in the 50s. Heat slowly, stirring to blend. Bring to a boil and cook for 2 to 3 minutes, stirring constantly. Remove the squash from the oven and reduce the temperature to 350 degrees. Drain the squash and turn them cavity side up. Brush the inside of the squash with part of the cranberry mixture. Press a sausage patty into each squash half. Now the recipe says you spoon a small amount of remaining cranberry mixture over each patty. I actually just used up what I had left after I brushed the inside of the squashes with the cranberry mixture. Return to the oven and bake for 25 to 30 minutes longer. And this is what they look like when they come out of the oven. They are so good. But as you can see from watching the recipe, they're kind of all the same texture. So now I'm going to show you what I did to switch it up a little bit. For my version of this recipe, we are still going to want to have our ovens at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, but we are going to roast the squash instead of boiling it. Prep the squash the same way by cutting it in half and taking out all of the innards. And don't forget that slice off the back so that they all lay flat in the pan. As you can see, I've drizzled the acorn squash flesh with olive oil and salt and pepper. And I'm just making sure that it's really well coated in the oil and the olive oil isn't pooling in the middle. Now roast these for 45 minutes to an hour or until fork tender. As you can see here, I've switched up the cranberry mixture a little bit. I brought a cup of port wine to a boil and threw in about a third of a cup of dried cranberries. Then I turned off the heat and covered them and let them steep and reconstitute in that port wine for about 20 minutes. Using the same maple sausage I did in the retro recipe, but instead of forming patties, I'm just throwing them right into the pan and browning them really nicely. Once the sausage was browned, I removed it from the pan and let it drain on a paper towel. Now throw in a half of a chopped onion into the pan. You're going to want to cook this down and scrape up all the yummy brown bits until translucent. I think this will take about 5 minutes. Add the sausage back into the pan. Then with a slotted spoon, scoop out the now plumped up cranberries and put them in with the mixture. You're going to keep cooking this so that the alcohol is cooked off. I also added a half a cup of steamed white rice. I just thought that it made this dish a little bit more of a complete meal and make it a little more hearty. Now add 1 small can of evaporated milk. This will just make the filling really kind of creamy and silky. Now season the mixture. I added some red chili flakes just to kind of offset the sweetness of the maple sausage. Finally, add a 1/4 cup of toasted pecans. This is just going to add an extra layer of texture to this dish. Bring the port wine back up to a boil. Add in a couple tablespoons of brown sugar. I think I added about 3 tablespoons in total. And then add a splash of balsamic vinegar. Now you're going to cook this down until it makes a really nice syrup. I think this will take about 15 minutes. Whenever I make any kind of syrup or sauce at home, I always finish it with a pat of butter. It's just a nice way of rounding out the flavor. As you can see, I'm really using every ingredient from the retro recipe in some way or another in this recipe so that it really keeps the same flavor profile. The squashes are out of the oven, and here I am just redistributing the olive oil all over the flesh. Now scoop the filling into the cavities of the acorn squash. Feel free to fill it up as full as you want. If you have any left over, any of the filling left over, feel free to serve it alongside. Some people may prefer more filling to squash. Now these will go back into the oven for about 20 minutes until heated through. Oh, and please don't mind my Halloween oven mitts. They're all I had on hand at the time. Once your squashes come out of the oven, pour the port wine syrup over the top. If you have any port wine syrup left over afterwards, just serve it alongside with any excess filling. And that is my revamped retro recipe.
So that is it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this retro recipe revamp as much as I enjoyed making it. It was really fun to paw through these old recipes, and I'm really hoping to make this into a series, so if you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notifications bell, because that's an extra step that we all have to take now for some reason. And I will see you very, very soon in my next video. Bye!